Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get the regular and variant editions of John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose on Amazon.com today. A New Jersey man allegedly murdered his grandparents and his uncle in their condominium.
He's accused of killing his grandparents and an uncle yesterday in a condo in South Plainfield. New Jersey reporter Tony Yates live at the scene of the shootings with new developments, including this man facing a judge for the first time tonight. Tony.
That's right, Bill. We looked at the police complaint, and it said that the suspect was unemployed and that he, in fact, had a history of not being able to hold down jobs. But that is all we've learned thus far about his background. Nothing that would indicate that he would end up being accused of killing his family.
Mr. Brownbot, please state your name for the record. There you go.
It's Om Brownbot.
23-year-old Om Brownbot made his first and brief court appearance this afternoon by video. He's being held, accused of killing 3 of his family members early Monday morning inside the condo where he and all 3 victims lived. The Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office has identified the victims as 72-year-old Dilip Kumar Brownbot and his wife Bindu, also 72 years old, and their son, 38-year-old Yash Kumar Brownbot. The police complaint says the suspect confessed to shooting his grandparents while they slept in their bedroom, then went to a back bedroom where it says he shot his uncle several times. The crime committed, the report says, with a handgun that Brownbot says he purchased online.
We waive reading of the complaint to enter a plea of not guilty, Your Honor.
Brownbot had a seemingly calm demeanor during his appearance a day after the shootings. Police say he was the one who called 911 that morning, and when asked about who did it, according to police, Brownbot stated, "It might be me."
All we saw is that, there were a couple of ambulances. We thought, someone is hurt. But then I saw like 5 to 6 cop cars.
The family was not well known to most neighbors we spoke to. They say police let them know immediately that there was no danger to anyone else, that this was domestic. What's not readily known is what led up to this family tragedy.
So yeah, at this point we just pray that their souls rest in peace.
Brownbot was represented by a public defender today in court. His next court date is December 1st.
Now, in this alleged incident, 23-year-old Om Brownbot allegedly went into the home that he lived in with his grandparents and his uncle with a loaded firearm he purchased off the internet. And as his grandparents and his uncle were sleeping, Brownbot allegedly went into their bedrooms with that loaded firearm and allegedly wound up shooting his grandfather, Dilip Kumar Brownbot, and his grandmother, Bindu Brownbot, and then went into the bedroom of his uncle, Yash Kumar Brownbot, and allegedly shot him while he slept. And after shooting and murdering his grandparents and his uncle, this is where Brownbot allegedly contacted the police and let them know what he did. And after the police came to the scene, they pronounced the grandparents dead at the scene, and the uncle, Yash Kumar, wound up being pronounced dead as they got him to an area hospital. And as these family members were pronounced dead, Brownbot was taken into custody. Now, the New Jersey police see this as an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of the alleged actions of Brownbot, they fit the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And a possible motive for Brownbot participating in this series of murders of his family members could have been his frustrations about not being able to hold down a job. Now, according to reports, Brownbot, at 23 years old, was having difficulty holding down and keeping a job, and that could have caused a lot of friction between himself and his grandparents and his uncle. Now, in many South Asian families, holding down a job is a major part of a man's identity, and with this 23-year-old man having difficulty holding down a job, this could have led to a situation where he was having friction with the older members of his family, and that friction could have led to him winding up simmering and boiling in anger as related to his frustrations about not being able to keep a job, and even worse, having to deal with the pressures of family constantly criticizing him about not being able to maintain employment. Now, I know from personal experience how much pressure it is to try to be able to keep one of these jobs, and I also know about the stress that happens to a person when they wind up losing one of these jobs. Now, when an individual winds up losing a job, it is a very traumatic experience, very similar to that of a death in the family. And that whole traumatic experience is one that can wind up being exacerbated by very critical family members, and that criticism can wind up leading to a person becoming extremely frustrated and extremely angry because they feel like they have no support system. And because they feel like they have no support system and are in a place where they're under a lot of pressure, this can lead to a person winding up being on the edge. And if they don't know how to navigate through their emotions, what they will do is act impulsively and do something they regret. And that's what I believe happened here in the case of Brahmbhatt, who at 23 years old was a very young man who didn't really have proper male life skills or male survival skills, and that possibly was the reason why he wasn't able to hold down one of these jobs and keep it. Because when a boy isn't taught proper male life skills and male survival skills, what he will do is get on one of these jobs, and because he doesn't know how to navigate through his emotions, what he'll do is wind up acting on his feelings and doing things like impulsively quitting or going out here and saying things to authority figures like bosses to insult them or disrespect them. And as they make these statements, they wind up losing a job, not understanding that in this world, a man has to have thick skin if he wants to survive in this world, because the world is made very different for a man than it is a woman. And a man, in order to survive, has to go out here and have a built-up thick skin in order to be able to survive in the world, because you're going to have to take a lot of things people say in order to be able to continue making a paycheck at one of these jobs. And you have to have very strong discipline and self-control to get through a day at one of these jobs. And sadly, Brahmbhatt didn't have that life skill taught to him by his mother or his father. And as he went to live with his grandparents, what he did was he didn't know how to be able to know how to move and function in life. And as he was out here looking to work, he was possibly coming home to deal with a lot of criticism about him possibly being lazy or possibly being incompetent. And all of this criticism, compounded with the job losses and the stress from the job losses and the job searches, this led to Brahmbhatt having a lot of anger that he was simmering and boiling in. And all of that anger he was simmering and boiling in possibly had him seething in a rage that he had been boiling in for some time, because he had to be in a deep-rooted anger to sit there and possibly plan the murders of his family with malice aforethought. Because for him to go out here and get this firearm off the internet and then use it to murder his grandparents and his uncle shows me a deep-seated contempt that he had for all of his family because of his frustrations about not being able to function in the world. And I believe he was possibly deeply frustrated because he couldn't go out here and stop all of the criticism and complaints regarding his inability to hold down a job. And this possibly was what led to him going to, again, plot these murders, because this, again, I believe definitely was a plot of a murder with malice of forethought, and he possibly wanted to take their lives because he believed that they took his dignity with all sorts of criticism. And again, because this young man did not have thick skin, he could not handle the things that his family was saying, and then he wanted to hurt them the way he felt hurt about the criticism he was possibly getting from them. Now, all of this is due to the fact that Brombach probably felt like he had no power in his life, and the only way he possibly felt he could take power was by going out here and sadly taking the lives of those who loved him most, because his grandparents loved him enough to take him into their home, and they loved him enough to let him stay there. Unfortunately, Brombach couldn't appreciate the love his family was giving him, even as they were possibly criticizing him. He possibly couldn't see that the criticism was done out of love, and people wanted to see him do better. And no, because he was deeply frustrated about his state of life and how he couldn't get things to work. He felt like he was in a place where he had nothing to lose as related to all the pressure he was under, and that's what possibly led to this motive for murder as related to this entire case. Now, most people as related to this case, when they hear about it, will think that this is a gun control issue, but no, this is not a gun control issue, because 23-year-old Brombach bought this gun legally off the internet, and if he bought it off the internet, there definitely had to have been a background check as related to the federal Brady law, but nobody could have known that Brombach's interest in purchasing this gun was due to his frustrations about his whole situation. So this is not a gun control issue, because here's an individual who bought his gun legally like many of the mass shooters did, and his motive for purchasing this firearm had to do with his inability to make life work in the world, and that's the core of the man crisis. A lot of these men are participating in violent behavior because they did not get a foundation in male life skills or male survival skills. Moreover, they didn't have people in the community who wanted to have the patience to invest in them. No, a lot of times when it comes to young men out here, a lot of people expect the man to know a lot, but a lot of young men don't know anything, and they really need another man to give them guidance. And that's a big problem we have in our society, because we have a lot of males who, especially of the boomer generation and older generations, who are very selfish, and they don't understand that when you're dealing with younger men, they need you to have patience, and you need to give them guidance as related to life, because these boys do not know how to lead, and they need to see examples of leadership where men have the character to try to stand and work with them until they can get them to understand how the world works. That's the kind of investment that can lead to a man going from being a man who is troubled to becoming a man who can function. And sadly, Brombach didn't have that, because people didn't have the patience to work with him. And because they didn't work with him, he wound up becoming a man in crisis who wound up taking the lives of his beloved grandparents and his uncle, people who he's going to regret taking the lives of when he's in the criminal justice system, and he's in that jail cell and possibly winds up in the penitentiary for life because he confessed to these crimes, in places where he has to deal with the authority of males like the CEO, who he cannot fight back against, or having to deal with the whole social hierarchy of the inmate system run by Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, who will definitely see Brombach as a commodity they can trade for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, off-brand Oreo cookies, off-brand lemon cookies, off-brand duplex cookies, off-brand chocolate chip cookies, snack pack puddings, Fritos chips, Kit Kat candy bars, lemon balls, gum drops. I mean, this guy is basically going to have his front side and back side traded in that penitentiary, and he's going to have to deal with that torture for the rest of his life, along with the memory of killing all of his relatives over something as simple as of keeping a job. And again, he's going to have to deal with that regret as he's suffering inside of that penitentiary. And that is the great tragedy of this entire story of this 23-year-old man who basically has lost his entire life, all due to his feelings of frustration about not being able to keep a job. I mean, this is something that I ran into when I was working at the Strive Job Readiness Workshop, where we worked with individuals like an Brombach, where we tried to help these individuals get their attitude and their mindsets right as related to the job market. And sadly, this guy didn't learn what he needed to be job ready, and he won't ever learn until at all because he's in the penitentiary. And this man who was on his way to having a life now has had his whole chance at having his life ended, and now that he's had his life as related to freedom ended, he is now a man in crisis. And sadly, that's all because he was never taught about more important things like his intangibles of manhood, like his dignity, his self-respect, and most importantly, his freedom. And when you have family members who are critical of you, that's where you have to learn how to navigate through your emotions and understand that sometimes they're being critical of you because they love you and they want to see you have the best, and they don't really understand what's going wrong. A lot of times you have older family members where they live in a different time period where the job market was very different. This was a conflict that my father and I had for many years. I mean, he came up in a time when the job market was, if you just walked up to a company and asked them if they had jobs, they would tell you they had something and you could get that job. But I came up in a time where people were creating all these crazy lists of criteria, wanting multiple college degrees and years of experience, and a lot of times they weren't even reading the resumes. And there was a conflict between me and my father when he was alive, but I always understood that I needed to be respectful of him, and I also understood I needed to navigate through my emotions, even as I was out here struggling to look for work and dealing with all of the criticism. I understood I needed to understand that people were saying things because they cared about me, and I needed to not take things personal. That was one of the things that I learned out here when I was looking for work and still looking for work, that I can't take things personal. But sadly, Brombach didn't really have that kind of understanding or patience that the Most High gave me as related to my employment struggles. And because there was nobody there to teach him that, or his family, that they couldn't take it personal, and that the world has changed because it is very hard to get jobs these days. I mean, I have put in over 15,000 applications and resumes and barely heard back from anyone. So I understand what was led to this man becoming a man in crisis and what led to his frustrations. But nobody has a right to take anybody's life, no matter how frustrated you are. Sometimes you just got to go out here, take a minute and cool off and walk away. Take a minute and just walk away from people. Go outside, go walk around the block, or just go out and just take a breather for a minute, because you can't take everything personal as related to what people are saying to you, to the point where you want to take people's lives because you're frustrated about not having a job. I mean, I have been stuck in a situation where I haven't had a job in 15 years, and I've had to find alternative ways to make livings, like writing my books, like The Man Crisis, and making videos, hoping to help other men who are dealing with these kinds of struggles, hoping to help men who are dealing with the same type of frustration, hoping to help those men to the point where they understand that they have to find another way to do things, and hoping to save a man like Brombach from being a man who winds up becoming a man in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to males becoming motivated to participate in extreme behavior like this and the dysfunctional behaviors that beta males participate in, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you'd like to see me make more videos regarding the Man Crisis or men's issues, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.